Beyond the chains and whips, there lies a more sinister dimension to the lives of enslaved Africans. The horrifying facts of the sex lives of enslaved Africans that you couldn't ever imagine. No one could dare to treat animals like the way they were treated. Stay tuned to unearth the disturbing truths behind the twisted, intimate lives of those bound in servitude, and witness a chapter of history too horrific to ignore. The dark shadows of America's history are impossible to ignore, especially when it comes to the deplorable institution of slavery. From 1690 to 1865, a significant number of people were uprooted from their homes, ripped from their cultures, and forcibly brought to the United States, where they faced a life full of exploitation, pain, and degradation. The collective memory of these years still stains the nation's conscience, and while both enslaved men and women suffered unimaginable atrocities, it's essential to highlight the unique and particularly harrowing experiences of Black female slaves. To start with, the labor roles for enslaved individuals often had a gender divide. Men typically bore the brunt of the more physically grueling tasks. However, the trauma inflicted upon Black women had layers that extended beyond just labor. Their very bodies and identities became sites of exploitation, mainly due to the perverse intersection of racism and sexism. Their sexuality was abused and commodified in deeply disturbing ways, giving insight into the multidimensional challenges Black women face today in terms of reproductive health and body image. The horrifying experiences that many Black female slaves went through are gut-wrenching. Subject to public humiliation, they faced invasive physical examinations, primarily when their potential for reproduction was assessed for auctions. The perpetual threat of sexual violence was omnipresent, with both slave masters and other white men viewing them as fair game. Can you just imagine many women were repeatedly raped, not just as a cruel exercise of power, but also as a calculated economic strategy? By forcing them to bear children, the number of slaves, and therefore profits, could be increased. This was one of the heinous conditions of that time, but it's just hinted there is a lot more to reveal. Just stay tuned and face one of the darkest parts of humanity. Given this brutal backdrop, the concept of motherhood for enslaved women was fraught with its own set of agonies. After enduring the pains of childbirth, these women, especially on larger plantations, often had to return immediately to grueling work, leaving their newborns behind. On smaller estates, the added responsibilities of motherhood were merely another layer of work on their already overloaded shoulders. And while the instinct to escape this life of torment burned strongly within many, the maternal bond held some enslaved women in chains, as they chose the known horrors of bondage over the unimaginable pain of being separated from their children. A further somber chapter in this narrative is the experimental surgeries that many of these women had to endure, often without the mercy of anesthesia. Records suggest a harrowing statistic: over half of enslaved women between the ages of 15 and 30 were victims of sexual assault. It's a chilling contemplation, pondering the depths of human cruelty. What's even more haunting is the question, are there still more stories, even graver horrors, from that era that remain buried, waiting to be told? During the slavery era in the U.S., there was a widely held belief in white society that Black women were inherently more sensual. This long-standing stereotype portrayed Black women as naturally seductive. Words like alluring, tempting, and lewd were frequently linked with them. Interestingly, while white women were generally viewed as embodiments of purity and modesty, Black women were often labeled as naturally wild or even predatory. There's this stereotype called Jezebel that essentially painted Black women as seductive beings who existed mainly for the pleasure of others. The strength of this stereotype was particularly evident during slavery, where Black women's bodies were commodified as objects. It's shocking to note that many slave masters believed they had a right to these women, leading to all sorts of abuses. Sometimes, enslaved women felt that compliance might lead to a better future or freedom for their offspring. A 1915 movie called The Birth of a Nation showcased a character named Lydia Brown, a mixed-race woman portrayed as overtly sexual, attempting to seduce a white man. This portrayal set a precedent, with movies highlighting Black women in such roles becoming more prevalent by the 1960s. The end of slavery didn't bring an immediate end to the struggles of Black women. They then faced the challenges of the Jim Crow era and the so-called Black Codes. These were laws designed to limit the freedoms of Black people. Shockingly, these oppressive structures persisted for about a century after the Civil War. Throughout this period, Black women faced numerous horrors, from rape and mutilation to forced sterilizations. The reasons for these atrocities were many, but a significant factor was that laws seldom offered protection. However, change began in 1964, when President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act targeting an end to segregation. Yet the legacy of the past ran deep. For many black women, especially those in disadvantaged situations, access to quality healthcare remained elusive, and their reproductive rights were often curtailed. The societal and legal systems at the time facilitated such injustice, offering little to no accountability for those who perpetuated these acts. So there was this powerful woman named Maria W. Stewart. She was not only a pioneering black abolitionist, but also a strong advocate for women's rights. She once posed a challenging question: what if I am a woman? Imagine the weight of that during her time. The implications of recognizing black women as full-fledged human beings, with all rights intact, were massive. Stewart's query highlighted the essence of black womanhood, asserting that they too were rightful owners of their bodies, deserving of autonomy and consent. Malcolm X once put it quite bluntly: the most disrespected, unprotected, and neglected person in America is the black woman. And this wasn't just rhetoric. Even during the civil rights movement, which spanned from the 1950s to the 1960s and aimed to champion equality for all colors, the sexual abuses and prejudices against black women persisted. In fact, the legacy of poor health care from the Black Codes and Jim Crow era continued, leaving many, especially those in poverty, with either subpar medical services or none at all during the Civil Rights era. But moving forward, even after the Civil Rights era, the image of black women in media still bore the brunt of age-old stereotypes. Just like in the movie Birth of a Nation, black women continued to be exploited across various media platforms, movies, music, photos, you name it. Mainstream media, in particular, had this peculiar way of over-sexualizing black women more than their white counterparts. There's this intriguing study that analyzed music videos titled Sex and the Spectacle of Music Videos. The findings: out of 120 music videos, black female characters were far more likely to be shown in revealing attire than others. What's more, these women weren't portrayed as central figures in these clips. Instead, they were often reduced to mere decorative elements, tailored to appear alluring to male viewers, and this isn't a one-off observation. Numerous content analyses have consistently found that black women are depicted in a hypersexualized manner, especially in rap music videos, focusing excessively on their physical appeal. Did you know there was a study titled Beauty and Body Image Concerns Among African American College Women? This research shed light on several themes, from hair to skin tone, body type, and even the influence of media. What's truly disheartening is how mainstream culture seems to prioritize European features while sidelining or exoticizing the beauty standards of other ethnicities. It's no secret that beauty in the US has long been linked to fair skin, blue eyes, and long blonde hair, features closer to African aesthetics. They've been painted as less feminine or even downright undesirable. This messaging isn't just from a single source. It's everywhere: media, churches, government, businesses, and even within families and peer groups. Can you imagine the toll this takes on an individual's self-esteem? Black women, faced with such objectification, both in personal experiences and through media, often start seeing themselves through this distorted lens. And guess what follows? A myriad of mental health issues, from body shaming to depression. While we're on the topic of media, it's worth noting its dominant role in perpetuating these harmful stereotypes. It's not just films or TV shows. Music videos and lyrics reinforce the same. The lingering question then is, if the origins of these biases in beauty standards stem from the era of slavery, how differently would black women be perceived today without that historical baggage? Considering the 400 years of sexual exploitation that black women have experienced in the US, these historic stereotypes significantly